Welcome to today's Catholic Daily Readings from Christus Dominus Bread of Life. A reading from the first book of Samuel. And the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, though I have rejected him, so that he would not reign over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and approach, so that I may send you to Jesse of Bethlehem, for I have provided a king from among his sons for myself." And Samuel said, "How shall I go? For Saul will hear of it, and he will put me to death." And the Lord said, "You shall take by your hand a calf from the herd, and you shall say, 'I have arrived in order to immolate to the Lord.' And you shall call Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will reveal to you what you should do, and you shall anoint whomever I will indicate to you." Therefore Samuel did just as the Lord told him, and he went to Bethlehem, and the elders of the city wondered. And meeting him, they said, "Is your arrival peaceful?" And he said, "It is peaceful. I have arrived in order to immolate to the Lord. Be sanctified and come with me to the sacrifice." Then he sanctified Jesse and his sons, and he called them to the sacrifice. And when they had entered, he saw Eliab, and he said, "Could he be the Christ in the sight of the Lord?" And the Lord said to Samuel, "You should not look with favor on his face, nor on the height of his stature, for I have rejected him. Neither do I judge by the appearance of a man, for man sees those things that are apparent, but the Lord beholds the heart." And Jesse called Abinadab, and he brought him before Samuel. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse brought Shammah, and he said about him, "And the Lord has not chosen this one." And so Jesse brought his 7 sons before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen any of these." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Could the sons now be completed?" But he responded, "There still remains a little one, and he pastures the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we shall not recline to eat until he arrives here." Therefore he sent and brought him. Now he was ruddy and beautiful to behold, and with a stately face. And the Lord said, "Rise up, anoint him, for it is he." Therefore Samuel took the horn of oil, and he anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord was guiding David from that day and thereafter. And Samuel rose up, and he went away to Ramah.
Once you spoke in the night to your faithful ones. You crowned a youth while the strong stood aside. You looked past the armor, the height, the names, and set your promise on my life. I was not chosen by human eyes, not called in from the feast or the fire. I was hidden among the fields and dust, but you saw my heart, not my hand. You said, "I have found David, my servant. With your holy oil you have anointed me. Your hand shall always be with me. Your arm will make me strong." From the quiet place, from the sheepfold and the stone, you poured your oil upon my head and claimed me as your own. You did not wait for strength to grow, you did not ask for proof. Your Spirit rushed upon my frame and made a boy into truth. You said, "I have found David, my servant. With your holy oil you have anointed me. my Father, you are my God, the rock who rescued me. When shadows rise and kings fall fast, your mercy stands with me. You did not choose me for my crown, but for my yes, my trust. Your arm upholds me when I fail, your promise lifts the dust. I did not earn what you declared, I did not force your will. You spoke my name before the throne, and heaven answered still. Not by the sword, not by the spear, not by the praise of men, but by the strength that comes from you. I wasn't stepped on. You said, I have found David, my servant. With your holy oil you have anointed me. Your hand shall always be with me. Your arm will make me strong. You found me when I was unseen. You named me when I was small. And all my days will sing this truth. You are my strength, my all.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. And again, while the Lord was walking through the ripe grain on the Sabbath, his disciples, as they advanced, began to separate the ears of grains. But the Pharisees said to him, Behold, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbaths? And he said to them, Have you never read what David did when he had need and was hungry, both he and those who were with him? How he went into the house of God under the high priest Abiathar and ate the bread of the presence, which it was not lawful to eat except for the priests, and how he gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. And so the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath. Join us for today's reflection. Nobody sent for David. Samuel the prophet arrives in Bethlehem with a horn of oil and a divine commission to anoint the next king of Israel. Jesse lines up his sons like contestants in a royal pageant. Eliab steps forward first, tall and commanding, and Samuel's breath catches. Surely this is the one. God has to correct him. Do not look at his appearance or his height. I have rejected him. The Lord does not see as mortals see. They look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So Abinadab passes by, rejected. Shammah, rejected. 4 more sons, one after another, and 7 times Samuel hears the same divine verdict, not this one either. Samuel must have been confused. God sent him here specifically to anoint one of Jesse's sons as king. He has now seen all 7, and God has said no to every single one. Are these all the sons you have? Jesse's answer is almost dismissive. There is still the youngest, but he is out tending the sheep. Notice what just happened. The prophet of God shows up at your house to conduct sacred business with your family, and you do not bother to call your youngest son in from the fields. You do not even think to mention him until directly asked. David was so far off Jesse's mental list of potential candidates that he was essentially invisible, the boy watching sheep, the afterthought. Send for him, Samuel says. We will not sit down until he arrives. And when David walks in, ruddy and handsome with beautiful eyes, God speaks immediately. Rise and anoint him. This is the one. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. Here is the King of Israel. Here is the ancestor of the Messiah. Here is the man after God's own heart. and his own father forgot to invite him to dinner. The psalm celebrates what that anointing meant. I have found David, my servant. With my holy oil I have anointed him. My hand shall always be with him. My arm also shall strengthen him. He shall cry to me, You are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. And I will make him the firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. God looked at the lineup of impressive older brothers and saw nothing he wanted. Then he looked at a teenager covered in sheep dung and saw a king, not because David was secretly impressive in ways his family missed, but because God chooses differently than we do. God builds his kingdom with overlooked material, the youngest son, the forgotten one, the person nobody thought to include. This is not an accident, this is a pattern, and it continues directly into today's gospel. Jesus and his disciples are walking through grain fields on the Sabbath. The disciples are hungry, so they pluck some heads of grain and eat them. The Pharisees are watching, as the Pharisees always seem to be watching, and they pounce. Why are your disciples doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath? The charge sounds serious until you realize what they are actually accusing the disciples of doing. They rubbed grain in their hands and ate it. According to the labyrinthine traditions the Pharisees had built around the Sabbath law, this constituted reaping, thrashing, winnowing, and preparing food. 4 violations in one casual snack. The Pharisees had turned a day of rest into a minefield of potential infractions. Jesus does not argue about grain or definitions of work. Instead, he tells a story about David. Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? How he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for anyone to eat except the priests. This is a devastating response on multiple levels. First, Jesus is essentially saying that the great King David, the standard by which all Israelite kings are measured, did something far more technically illegal than what the disciples just did. David ate sacred bread that was explicitly reserved for priests alone. If the Pharisees want to be sticklers about religious law, they need to deal with David first. But Jesus is doing something far more subversive than winning a legal argument. He is identifying himself with David. He is claiming the same authority that David had to override ceremonial regulations when human need required it. And then he makes his claim explicit. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Lord of the Sabbath, think about what Jesus is claiming. The Sabbath was instituted by God at creation, woven into the fabric of the universe, codified in the 10 Commandments. And Jesus just declared himself its master. The one who gave the Sabbath has the authority to interpret it. The one who created the day of rest determines what rest actually means. The Pharisees looked at Jesus and saw a wandering rabbi with questionable disciples who could not follow simple rules. They evaluated him by their standards, measured him against their expectations, and found him lacking. They were so confident in their ability to identify what holiness looked like that they missed holiness standing right in front of them. Just like Jesse, who looked at his impressive older sons and assumed God would choose from among them. Just like Samuel, who saw Eliab's height and assumed that meant something. Just like every religious expert who has ever been so certain about what God wants that they failed to notice what God was actually doing. The connection between these readings is not subtle. David was overlooked by his own family, but chosen by God. Jesus was overlooked by the religious establishment, but was Lord of the very institution they claimed to protect. God consistently works through people, and in ways that the experts dismiss. This should comfort us and terrify us in equal measure. It should comfort us because most of us feel overlooked. We are not the impressive ones. We are not first in line when important things happen. We tend the sheep while our more accomplished siblings receive the guests. And God says that is exactly where he likes to find his kings. The last shall be first. The overlooked shall be anointed. The forgotten shall be remembered by the one whose memory matters most. But it should also terrify us because we are constantly making the same mistake as Jesse, Samuel and the Pharisees. We evaluate people by external markers. We assume God's blessing looks like success by our metrics. We build elaborate systems of religious expectation and then fail to recognize God when he shows up looking nothing like what we anticipated. The Pharisees were not stupid. They were devout. They had dedicated their entire lives to understanding and obeying God's law, and that dedication blinded them to the author of the law walking beside them in a grain field. David's brothers were not evil. They were simply ordinary men who assumed that the same ordinariness applied to their youngest sibling. It never occurred to them that the kid with the sheep might be the one God wanted. Who are you overlooking? What is God doing in your life that you have dismissed because it does not match your expectations? Where have you built such elaborate religious frameworks that you cannot see the Lord of the Sabbath standing in front of you, hungry, asking to be recognized? The horn of oil is ready. The kingdom is at hand. The question is whether you will see what God sees or keep looking at the outward appearance while the anointed one waits in the field.